Welcome back to a brand new episode of Your Wealth and Beyond. I am your host, Andrew Raffel, and today we have a special guest in the studio, Bayntree's very own Director of Corporate Development, all things business owner, tax planning, pension strategies. Brian Hartstein, welcome back to the podcast. How you doing today?
It's always a pleasure to be back. I think you very much oversold that, so hopefully I can live up to the top billing you just gave me.
Only go up from here, my friend. So Your Wealth and Beyond podcast deals with entrepreneurs, business owners, helping building wealth, finding purpose, creating the lifestyle that they can only dream of. And part of today, and I think it's going to be unique, Brian, because we're going to talk through on those of you that are business owners that have created a business and actually have revenue coming in. What are some of the things we can do as business owners to plan effectively, especially with our pre-tax dollars, as well as incorporating some things for not just the benefit of the owner, but also for the benefit of the employees. And I know your background over these last, 30 plus years, you started when he was 10, is really the expertise and the knowledge in this place. So I think listeners, viewers, you're going to get a lot of good action items to take from today. Again, don't look at this as advice, but just education. But let's jump in. So, when we look at the business owner, let's talk through on some of the things over your experience in your years. What are some of the biggest areas that you see that maybe they're not taking full advantage of when it comes to planning for their being efficient on those pre-tax dollars?
Sure. And let's for a second just define business owner, because normally our clients are going to be privately held, successful businesses, not non-for-profits, not public companies. For the most part, we're dealing with, companies that are owned by 1, 2, 3, 4 individuals, families, small groups, and are usually highly successful. And so, they're always looking for those types of strategies where they can be as efficient as possible with their pre-tax dollar. And that's usually where our work starts when we roll up the sleeves, is to say, where's your pain? What are you trying to solve? At both the level where you're trying to reward yourself as the owner of the business or the people you care about. And then also, how do we build a culture where people want to work for us and we have the ability to retain and recruit employees? And so that's normally where we'll start. And we usually start either with the business owner, we're going to start, working with their CPA as well on the tax side.
Yep. And that collaborative approach that we take here at Bayntree. And unfortunately, we don't see that quarterback or collaborative approach with a lot of the prospective clients that come our way. They may have a CPA over here and an investment advisor or broker over here and maybe an insurance person here, but nobody's talking. Nobody's looking high level of where things are today, where things were last year, but mainly also, most importantly, being proactive about where the future, what we can do to start building in some of these benefits and credits and things of that nature. So would you say for most business owners that you come across, do the majority of them not have any type of plan that is enabling them to put some of that pre-tax dollars away? Or what are you seeing the majority of people doing?
Yeah, it's a little bit all over the map, especially depending on how long the business has been in place for. Usually that'll dictate it, whether it's been around for a couple of years or it's been around for 30. So we see all different types of planning, and, really the word you use, which is the key, which is the proactive part, which is what can the advisors to the business owner be doing to be looking at strategies which might work, as opposed to saying, well, we don't really have much work. We just kind of have to do what we're supposed to do and just pay our taxes and go home. The answer is you might have a variety of different solutions available. And so, the CPA, the financial advisor, the attorney sometimes needs to work as a team in a proactive manner to walk through those and make sure we can explore, based on their facts, what is possible, what isn't possible, and then see if there's a really good fit. And normally that starts in the pension area. So many times we might walk in and say, hey, a business was started many years ago. They might have a 401k in place, hasn't been looked at in a while. And they might have put in just because they know they needed one, but now they have a mature business. It was 10 years ago when they put that in, and they haven't really gone back and looked at it for not only recruitment and retention, but how do the owners utilize that to maximize their own tax savings? So we see ones that are quickly put in, might be older. And we see some businesses that are immature that have never even looked at it as a strategy. So that's where we kind of roll up our sleeves and say, what can we do here?
Yeah. And I think a lot of times when you see these mature businesses don't have anything, they just haven't had the proper guidance. It's just one more thing on their plate. They don't maybe fully understand how it works, the benefits to them as the owner, but then also, as we talked through today, as that trickles down to that employee retention. And in today's environment, it's key that you build a culture that is allowing the employees to have a growth trajectory. And a lot of that also comes to, having a benefit rich type of program, which could be 401k, could be profit sharing. And so, part of that, when we look at cash flow and things of that nature, the one thing we get from every person we talk to is what they want to pay less in taxes. I've never had somebody come to us and ask us they want to pay more, right?
Or I paid the perfect amount, Andrew. Yeah. Thanks for asking. Most go, no, if there's a way for me to prevent what we call tax leakage and tax inefficiency, that's what I want to focus on. But what's interesting, especially with the labor market being so tight in the last 3-4 years, there's always been the need at the owner level or the highly compensated employee level to do that type of proactive tax planning. We're seeing now more of those owners coming back and saying, look, I need to compete in this market for employees. If I'm already doing the owner-only planning, how do I incorporate the recruitment attention and still get what I want? Or how do I put in this recruitment attention piece and then still be able to put in a piece for myself and how to make that work? So we're seeing a lot more on that side of, hey, I need a strong labor force, otherwise I have no business, but I still need to make it work for myself too. And that's where the real trick is, just to say, if we're going to put $1 into these plans, how do we make sure the owners are receiving the amount that they want to receive and feel like, okay, the rest of it I can share with the employees. Yep.
And those plans that you come across that maybe were put in place, like you said, 10 years ago, maybe it was through a very simple, like a paychecks, and it's kind of cookie cutter,
Sure.
right off the shelf, and they've just kept it that way. What type of plans do you normally see when it's those cookie cutter type plans that have been put in place for years and years and years, and they haven't looked at it and seen with some of the evolution that's out there and some of the things that can be happening to help the owner?
And that's usually what happens is either the owner has working with a payroll provider, a payroll solutions company, and they set something up quickly because they know they need it and they may not have had a lot of guidance, or they may have had some help in the past. Somebody helped them set up a plan, but they're not servicing it and there's nobody really doing anything. So what we really see is a couple things. Number one, we ask them what their goals are. What are you trying to accomplish? And so they'll tell us what their goal is. And normally that plan is not meeting that goal. They either said, well, I'm trying to put away as much as I can for myself, and they used a non-safe or harbor plan to do it. And therefore the employees are putting in enough to where they can put in their own. So maybe that's helping them from a cost standpoint, but it's not meeting their goal. So what we're finding is when they set these things up quickly, they pick provisions they don't understand. They might be picking formulas, whether a safe harbor or non-safe harbor, that don't meet those goals. And then they have a plan that's kind of clunky and is running and they're not quite sure why it's not working well.
And for the layman out there that hears this verbiage, safe harbor, non-safe harbor, can you give us a quick high level of what that means to somebody that has heard that term before, but doesn't fully understand it?
Wait, you mean pension people slip back into these weird acronyms and language? I don't ever do that. Yes. Normally, what I would say is safe harbor just has to do with what the employer might match an employee on their own contributions or just for being eligible in the plan. Safe harbor means the IRS is going to let you do whatever you want to put money away for yourself or other highlies, but you're going to have to put minimums away for the employees. So they're going to give you what you want, but you have to give a little too. If you want to use something where you say, I don't really care about doing something for myself, but I do need a plan. I do need to structure it in a way that's cost effective for my business. So I know I can carry the costs every year. Sometimes a non-safe harbor plan works well. So that's really what the difference is non-safe harbor gives you a lot more flexibility to design cost. Safe harbor is designed really to help the owners help themselves and then minimize what they might have to give mandatorily to the employees.
And then the structure of building out these plans. And again, the listeners, viewers, today we're talking about benefit programs and, for companies that have employees. We can do a whole show around if you're a 1099 or you're a solo entrepreneur. that you make good income and it's just you. There's some very, very, enriched programs that can be put in place. But with a 401k type of plan that has these employees, whether it's safe harbor, non-safe harbor, people hear this term TPA or third party administrator. So where does that fit into this whole package of things?
That's a great question. I know you were leading me up to that. So when we talk to business owners or CPAs or anybody about 401ks, whether they have one or they don't, if they have questions, we usually say we can start the conversation in two areas. We can start in design and we can start in structure. If they already have a plan, usually they're going to pop up questions that have to do with structure because they're having issues. So we say we can start wherever you want. If you ask us, we'll start in design. The TPA comes under structure. So design has to do with how do I design a plan to work with my specifics of my company and meet my goals. What is eligibility? When do people enter the plan? What's the matching? Are we going to use a profit sharing? All those things go into designing the plan for your company. The structure is who is doing what. You have a third-party administrator that's helping set up the plan, also setting up the plan document and helping keep it compliant throughout the year with the IRS and filing the tax return. You have a record keeper, most likely, that's helping create investment accounts for most people. That's where they have the ability to invest in different things. They can see the difference between a Roth contribution and a traditional contribution and all the fun stuff that people like to do. And then you may have somebody like us, a plan advisor that's helping the trustees along the way meet their fiduciary responsibilities and also help to educate the employees and provide the services and education they need so that they can make smart choices about their own retirement and help the owner meet all the requirements under ERISA to do so. So I'd say that TPA comes under structure. Who is doing what to operate the plan?
And that's a necessity to have the TPA to do all of the begin front leg work to get it, the plan document created, but then boots on the ground each year, making sure that it's meeting with ERISA and auditing and all of those things. And I think that's where a lot of times the business owner, if they don't have, and we'll talk through a little bit of like what we do as a firm here at Bayntree to hold the hand of the trustees. If they don't have that person or that firm that's helping to quarterback it, they could feel like, oh my goodness, there's so, because the TPA firms we've seen, they're great, but a lot of times they're not good at that communication of like, what is needed? Why is this needed? And then that trustee just feels overwhelmed that they're not getting the appropriate data, or it's just one more thing on their plate that they have to try to get through on their list of hundreds of items and to-do lists and things.
And that's even if they understand the language, because most like TPAs, just like CPAs, talk a little bit different language than the business owners. So the business owner is going to have to wade through a lot of jargon. And the way we look at it, as you know, is it's no different than if you're building a house. You're either going to be your own general contractor or you're going to have to hire a general contractor because you're doing other things. You're out with your family and you're running a business. You don't have time to build your house. And it's the same thing here. You have pieces working and either you can coordinate those or you're going to use somebody to quarterback those. The most successful of our clients say, we need help quarterbacking because we need to spend our time where it's most important, which is on our business. Right. And so that's usually what happens.
And you mentioned this plan design in whether, again, somebody's just firms looking to see what's out there, what can I do? Or they have a plan that they haven't looked at in a long time. But one of the real values is working with that owner, that trustee, and going through all the options that are available. And that comes down to that plan design.
Correct.
And, over the last, 10 years, there's been a lot of evolution, whether adding in the Roth component or some of the changes through the Secure Act and things like that. So when you're working to learn about the goals of the business owner, walk through on a high level of how we go about trying to come up with the best plan design options. Like I'm a business. What do I need to provide to you, right? In whether it be the census, things like that, so that then we could get to work and provide them those options to show them how this thing's all going to look, how it's going to benefit them, benefit the employees. So what's your process, or what's in that you brought here into Bayntree to start building out the plan design and making it where it's explainable to this business owner that may have never gone down this path before?
Sure. And so, you kind of come at it from two spots. Either they got it sent in by their CPA or somehow we connected with them on their own. And normally it's going to come down to trying to find out what they want to accomplish goal-wise. Are we trying to reward you and your family? Are we trying to retain and recruit the employees? Are there other goals that we want to check off?
What if I want to do it all?
The Swiss Army approach. Well, then I'd say let's start digging in under the hood, which is what type of entity do you have? How many employees do you have? All the census information we're going to need, from dates of hire, dates of birth, salary information. And then we can start rolling up our sleeves and looking at your census data and saying, okay, if you have an average turnover of X, where do we set your eligibility? How much, a lot of times people have a wish list. They say, we want to do all these things, but here's our resources. You can't meet the wish list. So then maybe coming up with a match that is effective for helping employees, but yet still cost effective for the business, where they don't feel like they're going to get to the end of the year and say, this is going to be a difficult number for us to meet, having to fund this for our employees. So we go through census data, we go through a goal setting, and then we look at how they're operating the business from a cash flow standpoint. Did they say, okay, here's what we think might be the best design. And then it's a matter of going out and finding the right parties to work on. That's where, what's the right TPA? There's lots of TPAs. Some are big, some are small, some have specialties in certain types of plans. It's knowing where to go across the country, finding the right TPA. Some clients, their experience, if they've had a 401k, they don't even see the moving parts. We call that bundled. They might have gone to a Fidelity. And Fidelity's been doing everything. They don't realize that there's three components. There's advisory, there's a TPA, and the record keeper. They see one, even though there's three things happening behind the scenes. So once they realize who's doing what, we can help educate them and saying that's not the only way to do it, although we could do it that way. But once you understand the parts, now we can build a better mousetrap.
And you talk about like this eligibility. So that's one area when you're looking at trying to understand the business and the type of turnover that they have, or even where are they going to be growth wise? How many employees do they have today? But where is it going to be in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years? Because if we don't think about what the future growth is going to be, we could have a plan that we're building right now that's great, but then it could blow up on them.
So we had a simple case is you have to project out, and you have to look at hiring and you have to look at cash flow, because some of these plans, if you have a company that has variable cash flow that can whipsaw from year to year, even though the numbers might look good and they may say, we want the benefits, that's not going to be a good plan for you. Other plans may be a better fit. If you're going to start ramping up hiring, that can be a problem for certain types of plans. We see a lot in the financial advisory community, very sophisticated plans put in for a business owner, and it helps them save a lot of money. It looks great. And then years 3 come around and they're screaming because they hired 30 new employees. The right questions weren't asked in the first couple of years because they said, this was our growth plan for 5 years. All of a sudden I'm getting these huge bills for funding this plan. I didn't necessarily know we were going to have 35 employees in this plant. Well, nobody asked the right question. So you have to project out maybe what the business might look like in 3 to 5 years. We are looking at what might look like in 5 years, just so we can get a cost, estimate, and then sit down with the owners and go, here's how we're going to map it out. Is this something that's accessible to you? Because those will blow up real fast.
And is there a best practice when we look at, like, for instance, one of the easy ones to figure out of who's going to be in the plan, this eligibility for you listeners, viewers out there, it's for the employee to be part of the plan. They have to meet certain thresholds.
Correct.
And I know it's not a one size fits all, but what are you seeing in the marketplace right now that most businesses are utilizing for the employee to be eligible to take part in this company 401k plan?
Sure. And so we're going to delineate here between two types of planning, and neither are better or worse. They're what you're trying to accomplish. If we have a highly successful business and business owner or owners, and they're trying to maximize their savings, they don't have a huge group of employees. They're probably going to reward the employees, but they want to probably keep them out as long as possible because they probably have a very benefit-rich plan in there. And they're saying, look, anybody that's included is going to cost us a lot. So we want to make sure we're going to keep them for a long time. So they might have eligibility, which could be as long as you can keep somebody out. Age 21, 1 year of service, what we call only semi-annual entry dates. On the flip side, you could have a business with 50 employees. In that industry, could be completely different. They are competing hard for workers and they need people. And they look at the 401ks when people are valuing benefits and go, how strong is yours? So they want people in quick. They only want a 60-day eligibility period. They want some different things there. So depending on that business, they may want people in fast because those people are going to look at it as a criteria for employment, right?
Yeah. So a lot of different levers that you can pull as the trustee as you're working to design this plan. And that's where having, a team approach can help them understand all the various options that are out there and what's going to make that best fit for them. So when we look at trying to think of so creating the plan and so forth, but for for again, the layman out there, when we think of the different pieces, the different buckets, we have when a plan is created, we have the what's called those kind of four factors sometimes, right? The employee contribution.
We're talking about cost, or we talk
the actual employee, like the benefit, how I can put money into the plan itself. So we have contributions, we have the employer matching, then potentially some offer profit sharing.
Sure. And so we usually think of that as what we call our ABC, which is, think of level A, B, and C. A is what we call salary deferral, meaning does an employee want to take compensation that they've earned and put it into their own account? Now, it could be, that's when you get, could we use a Roth? Could we use traditional? Forget the type. It's just, do I choose to take my own compensation and put it into the plan, right? That is not an employer decision. That's an employee decision. So that would be level A. Level B is what we call the employer match. Any match that's made, it could be safe harbor, it could be non-safe harbor, but any dollar that's contributed from the employer towards the employee, and it can sometimes be tied to whether they put their money in. Sometimes it could be tied, doesn't matter if they put their own money, as long as they're eligible, they get that match. That's level B. Level C is what we call the profit sharing plan level. So that can be utilized with some profit or 401k plans. Sometimes it's not utilized. And that would be, some plans use A and not B and C. Some plans use A and B and not C. We have some plans that just use C and they don't actually have A and B. So part of it is trying to tailor those types of things to the business owner. If a business owner said, I want to max out as much as I can put away, but I really don't need to put away more than, $80,000, $90,000, maybe a 401k profit sharing plan is going to work perfect, because we can get just about up to that limit, especially if they're over age 50. If they said, gosh, Andrew, my business did great this year and it's going to do really well going forward, I could put away a couple $100,000 this year if possible. I said, now we might want to look to that next level, which might be a defined benefit plan or a cash balance.
Yep. And we'll talk on that in a few, because that's more of the Cadillac. You mentioned something interesting, that this on the employer match, the safe harbor versus non-safe harbor. So there's actually plans that are put in place where the employee does not have to actually contribute their own on what we call the employee contribution, but they could still get a match from the employer.
Yes, there are actually designs where an employer match is not predicated on an employee's contribution. It just is pure eligibility. So as long as they've satisfied eligibility for whatever that is for that plan, and the employer decides to put a match in their profit sharing, they're going to receive that. So, there's two schools of thought there. Sometimes you have an employer that would say, I certainly want to help employees, but if they want to help themselves, then I really don't feel the responsibility to help them. Then there's ones that might say, well, that's true, but there are also employees that may not be able to afford to put their own money, and they might be running their lives in a way that they need every last dollar. And I don't want to penalize somebody for that. So there's no right or wrong, but there's definitely different design.
And one of the changes we've seen from the Secure Act and over these last few years is that a lot of these newer plans, when an employee comes on board, they're automatically getting enrolled, when they meet that timeline, right? But it's where they actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, they have to, employee has to actually then opt out of the plan. So what's the reasoning behind that?
It's actually part of a larger set of changes in the 401k industry that goes back to December 29th, 2022, I believe, when Joe Biden signed that into effect. And so that kind of created this new watershed moment in 401ks in terms of change. And one of the parts of the change, which is for some people has crisis because they have existing plans, they're going, we have to make some changes. But like anything, there's opportunity there, opportunity to harness that and really make it work for your company. So you've got that cross there of a watershed moment of all these different changes happening at once. And so we're kind of like tackling those with our clients right now and trying to figure out, where's the best sweet spot for them in terms of how that's going to affect their planning.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I do understand it. I get it. It's forcing people to start saving and then setting it up where a lot of them too have the automatic every year goes up. Their employee contribution goes up, starts at 3% and goes up 1%.
So that's the auto increase, right? So plans that were around before that date don't necessarily have to make any of the changes. They're kind of grandfathered in. And plans that have been put in place since that date, they basically have to make that change. And what that's called is an auto enrollment, meaning if you're going to put a plan in, you have to auto enroll everybody once they become eligible. And like you said, they can always opt out. They've got 90 days to opt out. But then if they choose not to, they're going to be deferring part of their compensation. And then it could auto escalate. The next year, it might go up a certain percentage till they hit hit a certain threshold. However, they can always change and not do that as well. But what the US government is trying to do is make these plans more available to the American worker, and hoping they participate and trying to create more participation, because then if they don't, then the onus is just going to fall back on them.
And when a plan design is met to the standards for this particular business, that's one of the things that we do here at Bayntree. One of the other areas that comes into play is that you, on the financial advisor side, you'll work with the trustee to try to incorporate the right funds within the plan that are going to meet ERISA guidelines and be, lower cost, and give them enough diversification without maybe being overwhelming of like should we have 50 different fund choices, or, should it be 10? That's another variable that a lot of times the trustees are like, it's a foreign language to them of trying to figure that out. So how do you go about doing that and working to build in within the platform itself, finding the right funds within that plan that are going to meet all of those different guidelines?
That's tricky because every plan's different. And obviously you have different trustees and they all have their own thought process about what they want to see. Even though we're giving them our guidance and saying, here's what I think you need as a framework, they're always going to put their own stamp on it. And so I think you kind of have to look at two different schools. You have plans that are being set up brand new, and then you've got existing plans. So plans that are being set up brand new, we definitely want to go through and try to help create kind of a sweet spot where we're making sure we're covering, ERISA doesn't really give you a lot of guidance. The minimal things you have to have are so bare bones. You're way past that today. So, but you also don't want to create confusion. You don't want employees to look at something and say, I don't know where to start, because you don't want somebody to free frozen in inaction. So normally you're trying to create is a pretty tight lineup, we call it, of funds where it's covering all the different asset classes, where if you had a do-it-yourselfer, they could build their own pretty robust portfolio out of the different options. Now, we have some plans that have way too many because the owners want them, but we have some plans that are, they might have a good 15 different options where you could build a portfolio, or they have options like target date funds or target risk portfolios for people who say, I need help, but I need help in a way that a portfolio manager might do it and manage it for somebody who's either my age or my risk tolerance. So we try to create that sweet spot. That'd be with a new plan. Sometimes we inherit plans, and then we have a variety of different funds that have been picked, all kinds of things all over the place. And then we either have to help them kind of pare it down because we don't want too much change at once. And then we kind of help them create a spot where they're saying, okay, maybe this works for you. It wouldn't be what we designed right away, but we're kind of agnostic. We work on all platforms. And so we just want to make sure we can help the client meet their expectations. And then we might help them monitor it. We help put a process in throughout the year where we're monitoring those funds. We have our own kind of proprietary formula that we use to monitor those and report on those. And that way we can go back and not only tell the trustee, you've done what you needed to do to meet, the prudent person obligation under ERISA. And if any employee ever asks and say, well, what does the company do to make sure what we have is current and somebody's watching it and it's what is best for us? And you can say, that's why we engage the right advisor.
And then the other value add that not all firms bring to the table, but you create the plan, it's dialed in. Now you got the employee that may or may not understand what the plan is all about. So having a team like what Bayntree, one of the value adds for our clients that are on the, we're the advisor on the 401k and helping them through all the things you just talked about and coordinating with the TPA. But now it's that sounding board, that education for the employees that they can reach out to an advisory team and financial advisors to help them understand the plan, meaning what they're going to do for them, and then to potentially give them at least some idea of risk tolerance and understanding their age and understanding what they potentially should be doing in how to allocate properly.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that we do extremely well. One of my favorite parts of it is that educational side, which is saying to the owner, look, there's certain things that you have to provide under ERISA to the employees to help them from an educational standpoint make smart decisions. But there's ways to go above and beyond that, because you want your workforce to feel like, hey, I've got these tools, my employer cares about me, and I've got the ability to make smart decisions. So, having not only what the record keeper provides, because they'll have good resources, but those will be specific to the 401k. They cannot go outside in terms of answering questions about a Roth IRA and how does that function with my 401k in terms of when I'm 65 and planning. So we have to be there to provide those. So whether it's providing monthly educational topics, kind of bite-sized digestible pieces of good action items that you can put in use today, or maybe some high-level ones, having the access to our resources here, whether it's technology to be able to do basic planning, risk tolerance, look at your tax returns, being able to ask a question. Hey, Roth versus traditional, what's right for me? Because that's not a cookie cutter answer. So having the resources to be able to provide those to your employees, we think is critical, because as soon as you get a complaint or something's not right, that's when things go wrong.
And that's what we've seen the trustees really appreciate, is us working with them to figure out what we can disseminate down to the employees in these, monthly videos that we're shooting that gives them the ability to, high level, different financial topic. And then we record it, and then the trustee sends it out. And so you're not making everybody come to like the old way, which was, hey, we got to get 50 people into this room for a coffee that you do once a year. That, right. Again, nobody is really all in on that or having all their specific questions answered. Now they can watch it on their own time. So that's been really fun to be able to sit and coordinate with the trustees and figure out, okay, well, here's what we can provide to you. What do you guys want? And then being able to tailor that education approach and making it where we built this plan, but now let's try to get the most out of it by educating the workforce of how this is going to look, and then enabling them to, it's like a value add that beyond the plan itself, that now they're bringing one more set into the equation. They're bringing another value to the employees that helps the employee feel that my company has my back.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what, it's interesting. Post-COVID, you don't have companies that have like an open enrollment meeting at a location. All the employees come in and you've got all the different, benefit vendors set up, and then they go talk to everybody. Those days are gone. So but we have so many more ways to access the employees in terms of providing information that you don't have to be right in front of them. So in that sense, it's really opened up a whole new world, and it's given us the ability to deliver that information really, really well. And it is a great value add for employers, because, as soon as I'd say if you have a group of employees, there's going to be a subsection that will access those services and will find it valuable. And you'll hear positive things back from the workforce.
So we've gone through a lot today. I want to just touch real high level on the addition, that fourth part, that cash balance plan, the old school defined pension plan. I think that could probably be its own episode in itself. But when we talked about those for the owner, be able to put money away, be able to match, and then potentially profit sharing. But in certain situations, this business owner who has good cash flow and maybe meets certain requirements based on the age and the amount of employees that they have, there are fundamental ways that they can use an old school add-on called the cash balance or the defined benefit plan, where they could put away a lot more than 69,000.
Sure. And that goes, kind of the top of what we call the pension planning pyramid, where you've got the 401k at the base and you've got your profit sharing in the middle. Now you're getting to that defined benefit pension plan piece. And a newer version of that is the cash balance plan. And so that does give you the ability, like anything with the IRS, they give you the ability to put more away, but it comes with more requirements. And it might have more cost too, depending on how many employees you have. But normally, if I was sitting with somebody and I wasn't quite sure whether, we knew that they needed some type of tax planning, and this is kind of be the first arrow out of our quiver. We were going to attack about 4 or 5 different places, but we're going to come with the pension first because they didn't have a pension plan. So if you're the business owner, and I'd say if you in your head, you've generated all this revenue at the end of the year, and you've paid out all your expenses, and you've taken all the money you need to live your lifestyle and pay for your family. If you had amount of money that was left there that you could put away for yourself into another place that you could get a tax deduction for, but would hopefully stay for you, what would the number be? And some, you hear anything. It could be, if you said 75,000, then I know we're going to be in this type of plan. But if you said, Brian, we did really well this year, and next couple of years are probably going to be like that, I could have put 250,000. Now I know that we might need to be looking at that pension as an option. It may not work in the end, depending on other things going on, but that now we're like, okay, this is another option for us to explore. And maybe that is something we bolt on to a 401k profit sharing plan, or use as a standalone, depending on your situation. And that's how we maximize the savings. And then if you say, well, I'm part of a big company, I've got 50 employees, that's not going to work. That's when we might even get in even deeper and go into what we call multiple entity planning and all kinds of fun stuff, where we can try to hit a home run and do owner only planning here and employee planning here.
And that's the key is,
That's
making sure is, we got multiple different businesses and just making sure that you're doing everything appropriate and not running afoul of certain rules.
And there's lots of rules, so you have to be careful. But it goes back to that one question, which is, what do you feel is an appropriate amount that you'd like to put away each and every year if possible? Obviously, it can move up and down, and we don't know what business is like. But once you know what that number is, that's going to give the ability to then start tailoring it to where which plan might work and where do we start?
Yeah, and that's what we love doing, is sitting with the client, rolling up the sleeves, looking at, what those goals are, and then presenting out, here's all the options that are available. Nothing is, in a sense, perfect, but it's aligning the different options for what the goal is of that business, of where they are with the amount of cash flow, with the amount of employees, with what the growth is going to look like, and then trying to tailor that so that they're making the best decision possible. And that's just like, unfortunately, in our industry, we just don't see that these business owners are getting that type of coordinated attack to see what's out there, explaining it in layman terms, and then providing them the vessel to make it happen.
Right. And then having the ability to integrate at a team level, because again, you have to have integration with the accountant or their accounting team, because there are things that have to go back and forth, and the business owner is not going to want to be involved in, and or the legal side, whether some things have to be done there, whether the entity structure is the right structure, but it's got to be integration at the team level. It cannot be siloed. And so what we usually see is even owners that have had this type of planning, some pieces fall into the wayside. People aren't talking, and they're either frustrated, like we had clients come in that had an older plan. They didn't quite know what to do with it. Now, somebody had to help them set it up, but over time, they either weren't getting the right advice, and then they were frustrated.
Yeah. And as tax rates most likely are going up, this type of critical, strategic, proactive type tax planning and savings, et cetera, is going to be critical for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so if you've held on this long and you're still with us, this probably means that this is a pretty big hot button for you. So if you have a plan, or you've been thinking about getting a plan, and some of the things that Brian and I have been discussing.
Or costs of a plan, what does it cost to run one?
Yep. It's a lot of times on that end, it's like, I just need to see what I've currently done. Is it okay, or can I be doing it better?
Right.
And that's what we're here for. We can do a second opinion there, or if it's, hey, we've talked about this forever, but it's time to raise our hand and say, we want to get something in place. It's middle of the year here in June. We still have plenty of time for 2024 to implement a lot of different strategies. So it's as we always say, tax planning and savings and using your pre-tax dollars. You can't wait to December. You got to start looking at it now. And like the point you hit on is creating a plan that's going to enrich yourself as the owner, but then have that funnel down so that you're providing value for your employees in this tough market environment that we see with, keeping your good employees.
It's crazy. I mean, I've never seen, it's been 20 plus years easily since I've seen this type of focus on how am I going to bring the right employees into our organization, right? Because it's such a tight labor market.
So much. I mean, we could probably spend another 3 hours going through it, but we'll definitely dig into another episode on strictly on that cash balance plans and how they work and who should be looking at it.
Can I use a lot of jargon and pension stuff? Or
we'll use a lot of jargon. We'll have it in the show notes. So there'll be acronyms and a glossary, and help you decipher through on what we're actually talking about.
That's
but this has been great. High level. The more money that you as the business owner can save, the better for the long term. Anything we put in our pocket, it's 40 plus cents on the dollar in savings, and that could be up to 45 or 50 cents on the dollar in the next few years, especially depending upon what state that you live in. And then ultimately making sure any plan that you do have is
just the right plan.
Is the right plan, and that you're following all the rules and the regs, and that you got a coordinated team. So that's what we love to do here. Brian's background, and we get very excited about this. I was born
into it. I can't help it. Right.
So we appreciate you coming on to the podcast today. I know this one, listeners and viewers, was a little bit more detailed on boots on the ground and some of the actionable steps that you can take as you have a mature business. You have revenue coming in, what you can do to put more money in your pocket, and also create a plan to make sure that your employees are going along for the ride as well. So Brian, we appreciate it. In the show notes will be a lot of different areas on what we talked about today. And most importantly, way to contact us if you have questions on your current plan or anything that we talked about today. We're here for you every step of the way. Appreciate you, Brian. Happy planning, everybody. We'll see you real soon with a brand new episode of Your Wealth and Beyond. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.